Hello and welcome to another episode of Book Drops. I am Don Boozer, the manager of the Literature Department here at Cleveland Public Library and coordinator of the Ohio Center for the Book.
And I'm Sarah Flynn. I'm the manager of the Popular Library.
And we want to welcome you to our story time. We'll get into that in just a second. We did want to call your attention to a couple of events that are coming up. Every Saturday in November, we have virtual Come Right In events with the Ohio Center for the Book. We have a different author with us every Saturday, and we're using this as a way to encourage people to be involved with the National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo, as the acronym goes. So we have Michael Credico joining us this Saturday at 3:30, and we would be happy to have you join us. We will have a pep talk from the author, and then we'll do some writing exercises. So feel free to join us. We have all the information available at ohiocenterforthebook.org. Also coming up, we have Maker Week in celebration of the Maker Fair coming up next Saturday. You will find activities in the Maker area, let's say, of each of our branches, including downtown. And so we have those starting on Monday. So feel free to check out your local branch for those activities and get your making going. And then next Saturday we have the big Maker Fair, the actual Maker Fair at the Great Lakes Science Center in collaboration with Cleveland Public Library. And as part of that, we happen to have
we are going to have a virtual visit with author Nnedi Okorafor, and Don and I were lucky enough to be asked to interview her. So it will be a virtual and an in-person event, and you can see there's information up about it right now. So we're going to be talking a little bit about her and giving you a little preview, and then
we are very excited to be to have asked to do that. So we're looking forward to that. We felt that we didn't want to talk about Dr. Okorafor at this episode because we're going to be talking to her in person, and we want you to join in then. So we thought that this might be a good opportunity to look at some more diverse voices in science fiction and fantasy. And we kicked around how we were going to do this. And so we thought maybe the best way, try something a little bit different, and feel free to let us know in the comments if you think we did okay, that we decided to let the authors speak for themselves. So we will give you a little information on the individual authors that we're going to be talking about, and then we'll actually be reading a short selection from each of the books to hopefully whet your appetite to read the whole thing. I know that the selections I picked have whetted my appetite to read the books.
I'm reading half of these at least, if not all of them.
So the ones we haven't read, we are definitely going to dive in after we're done here. So
and we're calling it adult story time.
And we're calling it adult story times because kids get all the play time for story time online. So these are the adults. So along those themes, you will find some language and some things like that. These are for adults, but these are some really great books that we can recommend. And also with the authors themselves, these are just we're taking one selection from a lot of them. So
yeah, most
of them have lots more.
Definitely.
So I think you are actually going to go first.
Yeah, I was just going to do.
No, please. Yeah, a little bit. Yes.
Excerpt from Binti, which is a novella by Nnedi Okorafor. Get the glare off it. And I did this in audio. I think I talked about it for our audio book show. So this is a trilogy. So this is book one. I powered up the transporter and said a silent prayer. I had no idea what I was going to do if it didn't work. My transporter was cheap, so even a droplet of moisture, or more likely a grain of sand, would cause it to short. It was faulty, and most of the time I had to restart it over and over before it worked. Please not now, I thought. The transporter shivered in the sand, and I held my breath. Tiny, flat, and black as a prayer stone, it buzzed softly and then slowly rose from the sand. Finally, it produced the baggage-lifting force. I grinned. Now I could make it to the shuttle. I swiped Ochise from my forehead with my index finger and knelt down. Then I touched the finger to the sand, grounding the sweet-smelling red clay into it. Thank you, I whispered. It was a half-mile walk along the dark desert road. With the transporter working, I would make it there on time. Straightening up, I paused and shut my eyes. Now the weight of my entire life was pressing on my shoulders. I was defying the most traditional part of myself for the first time in my entire life. I was leaving the dead of night, and they had no clue. My 9 siblings, all older than me except for my younger sister and brother, would never see this coming. My parents would never imagine I'd do such a thing in a million years. By the time they all realized what I'd done and where I was going, I'd have left the planet. In my absence, my parents would growl to each other that I was never setting foot in their home again. My 4 aunties and 2 uncles who lived down the road would shout and gossip among themselves about how I'd scandalized our entire bloodline. I was going to be a pariah. Go, I softly whispered to the transporter, stamping my foot. The thin metal rings I wore around each ankle jingled noisily, but I stamped my foot again. Once on the transporter worked best when I didn't touch it. Go, I said again, sweat forming on my brow. When nothing moved, I chanced giving the 2 large suitcases sitting atop the force field a shove. They moved slowly, and I breathed another sigh of relief. At least some luck was on my side. So
That's great.
A little taste.
That's
But
really
yeah,
cool.
she's going to a university on another planet. She's kind of snuck away.
Very cool. Very cool. So the first author that I would like to share with everyone is N.K. Jemisin. I know that a lot of people are very familiar with her work. She has done some amazing work. One of her claims to fame is that she is the first person to win 3 Hugo Awards in a row for Best Novel. So that is an achievement in and of itself. I thought it was interesting that this book, too, has positive reviews in the back of it from Neil Gaiman, of course, and actually from Ohio's own John Scalzi has a review on the back of this particular one here. This is an interesting one in that it's it almost, the cities themselves become almost entities. And so I will read a small selection that sort of give you an idea of that. So the title of this one is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is the lesson. Great cities are like any other living things, being born and maturing and wearying and dying in their turn. Duh, right? Everyone who's visited a real city feels that, one way or another. All those rural people who hate cities are afraid of something legit. Cities really are different. They make a weight on the world, a tear in the fabric of reality, like black holes, maybe. Yeah, I go to museums sometimes. They're cold inside, and Neil deGrasse Tyson is hot. As more and more people come in and deposit their strangeness and leave and get replaced by others, the tear widens. Eventually, it gets so deep that it forms a pocket, connected only by the thinnest thread of something to something, whatever cities are made of. But the separation starts a process, and in that pocket, the many parts of the city begin to multiply and differentiate. Its sewers extend into places where there's no need for water. Its slums grow teeth. Its art centers claws. Ordinary things within it, traffic and construction and stuff like that, start to have a rhythm like a heartbeat if you record their sounds and play them back fast. The city quickens. Not all cities make it this far. There used to be a couple of great cities on this continent, but that was before Columbus. So we had to start over. New Orleans failed, like Paolo said, but it survived, and that's something it can try again. Mexico City's well on its way, but New York is the first American city to reach this point. The gestation can take 20 years or 200 or 2,000, but eventually the time will come. The cord is cut, and the city becomes a thing of its own, able to stand on wobbly legs and do, well, whatever the F a living. Thinking entity shaped like a it's language like a city wants to do. And just as in any part of nature, there are things lying in wait for this moment, hoping to chase down the sweet new life and swallow its guts while it screams. And that's why Paulo's here to teach me. That's why I can clear the city's breathing and stretch and massage its asphalt limbs. I'm the midwife, see?
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. My next one is a Nigerian science fiction writer. This is going to be a trilogy, but right now, this is the first book. The second book comes out next summer. So you can get like right in on the first book. Suyi Davies Okungbawa, Son of the Storm. I love that cover. So there was a big introduction to this, but I kind of wanted the part right before the book started. So this woman, she was meeting up with a contact, and she realized everything was going wrong with this setup. And so she starts running away from this city. And this is right leading up to the first chapter. 2 hours later, Oke looked back and saw the sky. The gray tip of what she knew came from thick black smoke. Not the kind of smoke that came from a nearby kitchen, but the kind that said something far away had been destroyed. Something big. She took a detour in her journey and headed for the closest high point that she knew. She chose one that overlooked a decent portion of the savannah, but also kept her way to the forest of the mist. It took a while to ascend to the top, but she soon got good enough vantage point to look across and see the caravanserai. The weary sojourner stuck out like an anthill, the one establishment for a distance where the road from the border branched into the savannah belt. It was up in flames. It was too far for her to see the people and the animals, but she knew what those things scattering from the raging inferno were. The body language of disaster was the same everywhere. Oke began to descend fast, her chest weightless. The forest of the mist was the only place on this continent where she would be safe now, and she needed to get there immediately. Whoever set that fire to the weary sojourner knew who she was and who her contact were. Her contact may or may not have made it out alive. It was up to her now to ensure that the continent's biggest secret was kept that way. The alternative was simply too grave to consider.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know.
Oh, jeez, oh man. Okay. I have a list, but I actually am going to make sure that I get this one in. This is actually the reason that I started to even suggested that we read the selections to Sarah. So I was looking for books and I couldn't find this one on the shelf. So I was like, oh, is it on the download? So that's why I'm looking at my phone. But this is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Maria Bazterrica. She is an Argentinian author, and the book was originally written in Spanish. But I would give you a quick synopsis, but I think you're going to know where this is going as soon as I read this. And this, it just sent chills down my spine. So this is definitely on my list now. So here we go. Carcass, cut in half, stunner, slaughter line, spray wash. These words appear in his head and strike him, destroy him. They're not just words. They're the blood, the dense smell, the automation, the absence of thought. They burst in on the night, catch him off guard. When he wakes, his body is covered in a film of sweat because he knows what awaits another day of slaughtering humans. No one calls them that, he thinks, as he lights a cigarette. He doesn't call them that when he has to explain the meat cycle to a new employee. They could arrest him for it, even send him to the municipal slaughterhouse and process him. Assassinate him would be the correct term, but it can't be used. While he removes his soaked shirt, he tries to clear the persistent idea that this is what they are. Humans bred as animals for consumption. He goes to the refrigerator and pours himself cold water. He drinks it slowly. His brain warns him that there are words that cover up the world. There are words that are convenient, hygienic, legal. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So the idea is that there has been some sort of pandemic that has made the consumption of animal meat, you just can't eat it anymore. So what has happened obviously it turned to humans. Yeah, exactly. But I'm just like, it was just the shock and awe and just the rest of the storyline that I had read about. I was like, oh, this is, and that's some good translation work there too. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can go on a later note with my next
Please
one.
do.
Just to,
Please do.
Yeah. So The Heroine Complex by Sarah Kuhn. I love this cover. So I looked at her website and she also wrote Shadow of the Batgirl for DC Comics, and then a Star Wars audiobook about a smaller known Star Wars character who I didn't even know called Dr. Aphra.
Oh,
so I kind of want to do those too. So here's just a little taste of this. I was telling Don about this ahead of time. I am not a superhero. This was the only thought I could muster when a cupcake with fangs launched itself at my head. Evie Duck, the voice rang out through the sugar-laced air, and whatever you do, don't stop filming. I'm on it, boss, I yelped. I bobbed out of the cupcake's path and flung myself behind a counter, my tailbone colliding with the floor of a previously pristine bakery. Cake my day. That floor had been a spotless expanse of ivory up till about 15 minutes ago when a posse of demons leapt through their portal of choice, assumed pastry form, and started acting like a bunch of a-holes. I peeked over the countertop, tightening my grip on my phone. Its plastic case was slippery with palm sweat. It was a cold sweat, though. No warmth. Never any warmth if I could help it. I finally located my boss, held up the phone aloft, hit record live stream on the video app, and managed to get her in frame as she spun around to deliver a solid roundhouse kick to another fanged cupcake. When confronted with the power and sheer stylishness of her thigh-high leather boots, the cupcake split in half, sending frosting pinwheeling outward.
That's awesome.
I mean,
Thank you. That lightened the mood a little bit. Yeah.
from cannibals to cupcakes.
Cannibals to cupcakes. Oh, there you go. That's a title of something. I don't know what, but that's a title of something. The book that I will choose next is the Winged Histories by Sophia Samatar. She is a excuse me. Her father was a Somali scholar and historian, and her mother was from North Dakota. She also has won the World Fantasy Awards for her work and was a finalist for the Locus Award for the best first novel, among other things. So this is a sequel to her book, A Stranger in Alondria, which was about a merchant's son who gets swept up in the political intrigues of a particular land. And he is also being haunted by the ghost of an illiterate girl that he has to help free to free himself from the troubles that he's in. So this one is actually goes on from that, and it's set in the same world, and it's about 4 women. There is a soldier, a scholar, a poet, and a socialite who find themselves on different sides of the rebellion that, of course, the merchant son has got himself messed up in on the previous book. So this is about how their struggles are to survive and what happens to those 4 women. So I will choose, and this also is a book that has a glossary in the back. So I am a sucker for a glossary. So
I had a few with maps.
yeah, maps. Oh, sorry, I digress. So, music for forgetting. What kind of music? What's the point of music that doesn't want to remember? Why sing at all? We could remember different things, perhaps. The bones of a woman laid out on the ground, or the men could remember the Che. They know it, these small boys. They learn it within their mother's tents. They drink it like milk, growing fat and happy on the Che. But they're not allowed to speak it. The women won't let them. They slap their heads, lightly but seriously. Don't talk like that. Don't say that. Say it like this. You, slap. You're not a girl. They laugh, shrill, blood-tinged laughter. This thing is theirs, the Che. They're going to keep it safe. Listen to him. Are you a girl? I used to love it when Haidas got slapped for answering in the Che. So happy I wanted to hug myself. But I was the good one. I never got slapped for talking. He was an outsider. The Che inside me was like a whale of gold. And then I grew up, and this gold was worth nothing. Nothing. You can't use it anywhere. It's only for fighting with other women or for crying. Or could we? Could we compose a song in the Che? It makes me want to laugh. What kind of song? A song about milking goats? A song about thread? We already have those scraps of nonsense, ta-la-la-di-da-di-da. And little songs about being abandoned, left behind. A great song, though, a Hawan in the Che. What makes a song great? It has a great subject, war. It's all about male kinfolk and the death of men. It always ends in blood and a call for blood. I've said this before. Tav, I'm spinning. Tav, I feel like I'm spinning around, spinning and spinning after I lost my brother.
Nice.
So many books, so little time.
I know.
We had this discussion before we started, and we were like, well, I need to front load those that are my favorites, and then if we have time for them.
Oh my gosh, it's so tough. But we can do another show. The other ones we don't get to.
There you go.
So my next one is Yesterday's History by Kosoko Jackson. And this is YA. And on the author's website, when not writing YA novels that champion holistic representation of Black queer youth across genres, he can be found obsessing over movies, drinking his umpteenth London fog, or spending far too much time on Twitter. So I like that. So this, I skipped over, I'm going to read a little bit, but he got a liver transplant, and then he is able to time travel.
Oh, as one does with a liver transplant.
The liver transplant. This is him just waking up the first time. The grass is refreshing, slightly wet but cool. It's most definitely not my bed. I lie there for at least 5 seconds like an idiot with my palms pressed against the soft, chilly blades, looking up at endless black sky that's replaced the ugly off-white ceiling I've stared at for almost my whole life. These 5 seconds are the most peaceful I've had in 6 months. And then I realize something's wrong. I sit up quickly and jump to my feet faster than I should. The ground rushes up and the world spins. My eyes finally adjust to the darkness, and I'm able to come up with 2 possible explanations for my change in location. One, somehow I've gotten up from bed without realizing it, and I'm standing on my street, the same street where I learned how to ride a bike in parallel park, where I almost had my first kiss, and where I broke my arm in the 7th grade. Two, somehow I've gotten up from bed without realizing it, and I'm standing in a Twilight Zone version of my street.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, I am going to jump ahead and talk about Zero Sum Game by S.L. Huang. There is S.L. Huang on the back there. I looked at the website of the author, and I thought it was great that it has S.L. Huang justifies an MIT degree by using it to write eccentric mathematical superhero fiction. So I thought that was great. She's also a stunt performer and a firearms expert, and she has credits that include Battlestar Galactica and Top Shot. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. So this was her first novel in the Cass Russell series, and Cass is able to do vector calculus at lightning speed in her head, so she can tell if somebody's throwing a punch the exact angle that she needs to be at for it to miss her and all that kind of stuff, which I think is really cool. It's an interesting superpower. But this book here, she ends up running into someone who has another superpower, which is the ability to get inside your head. And so at some point, she doesn't know what thoughts are hers and which ones aren't. So I think that's kind of cool. So to give you an idea of the writing style that we have here in Zero Sum Game, let's see, I'm going to do, let's do this one. She looked about 18, wide-eyed and gullible and wet behind the ears, but then I guess I can't judge people. People still assumed I was a teenager sometimes, and in reality, I was barely older than Courtney. Of course, age can be measured in more ways than years. Sometimes I had to pull a 45 in people's faces to remind them of that. I remember with a pang that my best 1911 had been lost back at the compound when I was captured. Damn it. Donna was going to get that in her expense list. So are you thinking about it? I was thinking about my favorite gun. You don't have to be so mean all the time, Courtney mumbled into her knees. I know I need help, okay? That's why I asked. Courtney Polk was a headache and a half, and clearing the names of idiot kids who got mixed up with drug cartels wasn't in my job description. I'd been very much looking forward to dumping her on her sister's doorstep and driving away. Though that small voice in the back of my head kept whispering, drive away where? I didn't have any gigs lined up after I finished this contract. I don't do too well when I'm not working. Yeah, right. Between jobs, you're a mess. I slammed the voice away again and concentrated on the money. I like money. Just how much cash do you have? You'll do it? Her face lit up and her whole body straightened toward me. Thank you, really, thank you. I grumbled something not nearly as enthusiastic and revved the station wagon down the empty Dawn freeway. Figuring out how to steal back someone's reputation was not my idea of fun. The voice in the back of my head laughed mockingly, like you have the luxury of being choosy. Sort of that hard-boiled sort of style, which could be a lot of fun.
Oh, all right. Another YA, Marie Lu, Sky Hunter. And she's the author of the Legend and Young Elites trilogies, which were kind of pretty popular. She worked in the video game industry before she became a writer full-time. This is just like the quick little intro. Ghosts travel in packs. This is the first lesson you're taught when you become a striker. You learn that ghosts used to be human before the Carenza Federation strapped them down and poured dark poison down their throats, twisting them into monstrous war beasts. Now you'll see them hunting in the forest at the foothills of the mountains in groups of 6 or more, a grotesque contrast to the serene, snow-dusted landscape. Their faces are white as ash, their skin split with deep cracks that expose scarlet, rancid flesh underneath. They are taller and stronger than any human who has ever lived, and their limbs grown out all wrong, spindly like a spider's. They smell like blood and earth. Though their eyesight is poor, they can detect movement well. Their hearing is superb, their ears stretched long and tapering to points. They can make out human voices a mile away. In their territory, to speak is to be found, so we remain silent, invisible to the eye and to the ear. Their teeth, too, grow longer and sharper than ours. The discomfort of it makes them gnash their fangs constantly, slicing new tears into their already ripped and rotting mouths. That's how you know they're coming. The grinding sound.
Oh, the grinding sound.
Excellent. I saw they described this as a mix between Quiet Place and Attack on Titan.
Oh,
I was like, okay,
wow.
that would sell this to anybody.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna do this one. Do I want to do? I'm trying to just decide. It's so hard to tell. Well, let's try this one.
Yeah,
Okay, so this we have Malka Older. The The credentials are amazing. So a faculty associate at Arizona State University School for the Future of Innovation in Society, a lecturer in the genre fiction MFA program at Western Colorado University, and an associate researcher at the Centre de Sociologie des Organisations in France, and a host of other academic credentials. This is her first novel. The idea is that it is 20 years after a powerful search engine monopoly called information has transformed the world into a bunch of little global micro democracies, which, you know what, no parallels with that with modern time. There's the Priority First Party and the Liberty Party are vying to take control from the ruling Heritage Party. And so a storm's a brewing. So that's the background for this one. But I read the things about, you know, the information conglomerate and things. I was like, oh man, here we are. Policy First doesn't have a full-time operative in the Ryukyus. It's a small archipelago with minimal domino potential, so only local governments and the biggest, best-funded players keep permanent staff here. But after hearing the rumor Ken passed on from Muru Suzuki, who is one of those people who always knows someone everywhere, gets in touch with a contact. At 51, Yuriko is old enough to have a Japanese name instead of the more Okinawan versions that became popular since elections started. That's not how you say it, she corrects the salary man in the back of her taxi. This name didn't exist in Okinawan. Offended, he doesn't tip her. Yuriko absentmindedly curses him out the windshield. The conversation they had had on the way downtown, Yuriko suspects him of heading for a love hotel, gave her plenty of information to pass on to Suzuki. And while taxi driving pays the bills, being Suzuki-san's Naha irregular is far more interesting. She's getting paid to gossip. She pulls over into an alley and opens a comms feed. Suzuki is not impressed. That's very good work, Yuriko-chan, he begins. Suzuki is the kind of manager who starts everything with positive reinforcement. Maybe it's the non-Japanese part of him, but she can tell that he's not happy, that there will be a but. But we know all that. We know there are still people in Okinawa who hate Japan and would vote to go to war. We know vote for us and we will smite your enemies works. It's worked since the Old Testament. What we need to know now is who is propagating the message and ideally some proof. Of course, Yuriko says, trying to look intrepid. And I suppose, Suzuki adds to himself, it will be good to know whether they mean it or not. Yuriko bows again. She already has an idea for how to proceed. She has no idea how dangerous it will be.
Oh, and that's a trilogy, I think, too. Yeah.
Yep. So those are some of the ones we didn't get a chance to look at today are An Unkindness of Ghosts, which is a multi-generation ship and the segregated and all kinds of interesting things going on with that. You want to just give some titles and authors to peak people?
Sean David Hutchinson, A Complicated Love Story Set in Space.
Oh, that's an awesome title.
I know.
Stephen Barnes, Lion's Blood, is an alternate history where Muslim Africans have settled in North America and have the Irish are slaves in this alternative history. And Stephen Barnes is actually the husband of Tananarive Due, another well-respected author as well.
And I'll do one more. War Girls by Tochi Onyebushi. And this one is 2072, and there's been like climate disasters, and there's just a few people on Earth, but a lot of people have been able to get off and go to other planets. But
yeah, it's kind of scary. You know, we're talking about sci-fi and fantasy, but we're kind of parallels with, you know, current events and all that kind of thing too. It's like, oh, he's like, a little too close. So we've come to another end of our book trust. We hope you enjoyed our little adult story time here, and hopefully we've piqued your interest with some of the novels that we read. You really can't go wrong with any of them. Feel free to drop by for comments later on if you read something, and feel free to post those in the Facebook page. And until next time, we will not be here the week of Thanksgiving. So we will see you again in December. So happy holidays and happy reading.